At 74, Ruth Carver thought she understood silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that comes before betrayal speaks. That morning, the kitchen smelled like warm butter and chamomile. Sunlight spilled across the wooden table she had owned longer than most of the furniture in her house. Everything in it was familiar, carefully placed, carefully lived in. She was pouring tea when she heard the front door unlock. No knock, just the soft click of entry. "Mom," Caleb's voice came first, calm, practiced. "You're home early." Ruth didn't turn immediately. "I never left," she said. A pause. Then footsteps. Caleb walked into the kitchen like he belonged there more than she did. Navy jacket, clean shoes, a folder in his hand. Not groceries, not medicine, paper. He placed it on the table gently, too gently. Ruth looked at it, then at him. "What is this?" she asked. Caleb exhaled like a man preparing kindness. "Before you react, just read it." She didn't touch it. "What is it, Caleb?" A flicker crossed his face, gone quickly. "Guardianship petition," he said. The word didn't belong in the kitchen. It didn't belong in her house. It belonged in courtrooms and hospitals and places where people stopped trusting each other. Ruth finally sat down, slowly. Her fingers rested around her teacup like it was the only stable object in the room. "Say that again," she said. Caleb pulled out a chair and sat opposite her, not beside her, opposite. Caleb said softly, "Mom, you've been struggling, forgetting things, small mistakes with money. I'm stepping in before something worse happens." Ruth stared at him. "I paid my electric bill yesterday." "That's good," he nodded, "but there are patterns." He slid a second folder across the table. Open, highlighted, bank statements. Ruth's eyes scanned them. Groceries she remembered, utilities she remembered. Then, charges she did not. A luxury restaurant, an online electronics store, a watch retailer. "I didn't buy these," she said immediately. Caleb didn't react to her words. He reacted to her face. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "You don't remember." Ruth closed the folder, slowly, deliberately. "If I was robbed," she said, "we call the bank, not the court." Caleb leaned back. "That's exactly what I tried," he said, "but they flagged inconsistencies, multiple access points. Mom, someone is already inside your accounts." A chill moved through her chest. Or maybe it was anger disguised as fear. "And that someone is you suggesting I sign away my rights?" she asked. Caleb sighed. "I'm trying to protect you." "That's not protection. That's control dressed as care." His jaw tightened slightly, for the first time. "There are deadlines," he said. "If you sign, it stays private. If you don't, I file anyway." Ruth looked at the paper again. Guardianship, custody, words meant for children, not mothers, not 74-year-old women who still ran their own kitchens. "You brought a court into my home," she said slowly. Caleb stood, walked to the counter, and then, without asking, he picked up her checkbook from the ceramic dish beside the phone. Ruth's voice sharpened. "Put that back." He didn't. "You shouldn't leave it out," he said calmly, tucking it under his arm. "You're making yourself vulnerable." "I said put that back." Caleb checked his watch. "You have until tomorrow morning," he said. "After that, I proceed without your signature." Then he left. No slam, no drama, just a door closing softly behind him. That silence hurt more. Ruth stayed seated for a long time. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, her tea cooled. Then her phone vibrated. A message. "Caleb, don't stress. I'm doing this because I care." She stared at it. Care, a word that now felt like something sharp. Ruth stood up, walked to her bedroom, opened the drawer where she kept important documents, insurance papers, property deeds, her estate folder. It was there, but something wasn't. A small envelope, her handwritten backup passwords. Gone. Her hands stopped moving, not shaking, still. That was worse, because stillness meant realization had already arrived. Caleb had been inside her house before the tea had even cooled. That night, Ruth did not cry. Crying would come later. Right now, she needed clarity. She sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop. Login, password incorrect. She tried again. Locked. Her breath slowed. Not panic. Focus. She opened her notebook. Wrote, "Unauthorized access suspected. Missing password envelope. Check accounts immediately in person." Then she added one more line. "Do not trust comfort." The next morning she stood outside Riverside Community Bank before it opened, thermos in hand, back straight, face steady. Not confused, not fragile, prepared. When the doors opened, she walked in first. Inside, a woman named Talia greeted her. "Yes, ma'am?" "I need to freeze all accounts," Ruth said. Talia hesitated only briefly. "May I ask why?" "My son is attempting access without authorization," Ruth replied. That changed the tone instantly. Talia guided her into a private office, closed the door, and began typing. After a few minutes, she looked up. "There were login attempts from a new device," she said carefully, "and a cosigner request initiated." Ruth's voice stayed level. "Name?" A pause. "Caleb Carver." The room became very quiet. Ruth nodded once. "As I expected." When she left the bank, something inside her had shifted. Not fear, not shock, structure. If Caleb wanted control, she would respond with systems, not emotion. And somewhere across town, her phone lit up again. "Caleb, you're making a mistake." Ruth looked at it, then typed back 3 words. "Not this time." Ruth Carver had always believed betrayal would look obvious. A slammed door, a shouted argument, something loud enough to name. But Caleb's betrayal was quiet, administrative, systematic. By the time she understood the full shape of it, it was already inside her accounts. The morning after the bank visit, Ruth woke before sunrise, not from fear, from habit. 74 years had taught her something simple. Problems do not disappear while you sleep. They wait. She sat at her kitchen table, the same place where Caleb had laid the guardianship papers, and opened her laptop. Riverside Community Bank login. She hesitated for half a second, then tried. The screen blinked. Access restricted. Temporary security hold active. Ruth exhaled slowly. Good. Someone had already taken action. But then she saw something else. A notification. Password reset attempt detected. 0314 a.m. Her eyes narrowed. 3:14 in the morning. Not random, not accidental. Intentional. She closed the laptop and wrote in her notebook, "He is still inside the system somewhere." By 8:30 a.m., she was at the bank again. Talia met her at the door without hesitation. "Mrs. Carver, we've been expecting you." That sentence alone told Ruth everything had escalated overnight. Inside the private office, Talia lowered her voice. "There were additional access attempts after your call yesterday." Ruth didn't sit yet. "From the same source?" Talia nodded. "Yes, same IP cluster, same region." Ruth placed her hands on the table. Steady. "Caleb," she said. Talia didn't confirm, didn't deny, just continued typing. "We've escalated your account to high-risk protection status," she said. "No withdrawals, no transfers, no beneficiary changes without in-person verification." Ruth nodded once. "Good." Then Talia hesitated. "There was also an inquiry." Ruth's eyes lifted. "What kind of inquiry?" Talia chose her words carefully. "Someone asked about procedures for guardianship-linked financial access." The air changed. Ruth already knew before the name came. "Caleb," she said again. This time, it wasn't a guess, it was a conclusion.
Outside the bank, Ruth stood still for a moment. Cars moved, people passed, life continued. But hers had narrowed into something sharper. A sequence, a pattern, a case. Her phone buzzed. Caleb. "Mum, please stop this. You're escalating everything." Ruth stared at the message, then typed, "You started this in my kitchen." She didn't send it. She deleted it, then wrote instead, "All access is now documented." Sent. Across town, Caleb sat in his car staring at the reply. His jaw tightened. This was not how it was supposed to go. He had expected confusion, delay, emotional collapse. Not structure, not resistance, not logs, not lawyers. Ruth returned home that afternoon with something she hadn't carried before. Copies, evidence, receipts of her own life. She laid them across the dining table. Bank logs, fraud affidavit drafts, device access reports. Every page made the same statement in different language. Someone had been inside, and it wasn't her. That evening, Caleb appeared again. No knock, just presence. He stood in her doorway like he had a right to the air inside her house. "You froze everything," he said. "Yes. That's extreme." Ruth didn't look up from her folder. "No," she said calmly. "That's prevention." He stepped inside anyway, uninvited. "That checkbook," he held it up slightly, "you left it in the kitchen again." "I didn't," she replied. "You took it." A pause. He ignored that. "You're making this worse than it has to be." Ruth finally looked at him. "You changed my password." "I was protecting you." "No, you were testing access." That landed differently. Not loud, but precise. For a moment, Caleb's expression shifted, then recovered. "You don't understand what this looks like. From the outside, I'm the son trying to help a declining mother." Ruth nodded slightly, then explained the electronics charge. Silence. "The watch store," she added. More silence. "The login at 3:14 a.m. Her eyes narrowed. His jaw tightened. "You're tracking me." "I'm protecting myself," she corrected. A pause stretched between them. Then Caleb exhaled sharply. "You're going to regret turning this into a legal war." Ruth stood slowly. "No," she said, "you are." The next morning brought escalation. Not emotional, procedural. A certified letter arrived. Guardianship petition filed. Temporary authority requested. She read it twice, then placed it on the table beside her notebook. She wrote calmly underneath, "He has moved from access to authority." And under that, "I will respond in record." By noon, she was sitting in Dana Whitmore's office. The lawyer didn't waste time. "He filed early," Dana said. Ruth nodded. "He's trying to control assets before discovery." "Yes." Dana leaned forward. "Then we move faster." Ruth didn't blink. "We already are." That afternoon, Caleb showed up at the bank. He didn't expect her to be there, but she was, sitting across from a branch manager reviewing logs. When he saw her, something tightened in his expression. "You're really doing this in public now?" he asked. Ruth closed the folder slowly. "I'm doing it where records exist." He turned to the manager. "She's confused. She doesn't understand what she's doing." The manager didn't respond, just slid a document forward. "Sir, we cannot discuss accounts without authorization." Caleb's jaw flexed. "I am her son, and that is not authorization." Ruth watched him carefully. Not angry, not emotional, observing. For the first time, she saw it clearly. Not panic, not concern, calculation under pressure. When he left, the manager leaned slightly toward her. "Are you safe, ma'am?" Ruth nodded. "I am now." That night, Ruth added a new page to her notebook. Not evidence, not logs, something simpler. Pattern confirmed. Escalation follows resistance. She closed the book and understood something quietly devastating. This was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a strategy, and she was now part of it.
By the time the court date arrived, Ruth Carver no longer thought in terms of fear. She thought in terms of structure. Every document had its place. Every timestamp had its meaning. Every accusation had its counterweight. And every silence Caleb had once relied on had been replaced with records. The morning of the hearing, Ruth stood in front of her mirror, 74 years old, silver-gray hair tied neatly in a low bun, beige blouse, simple cardigan. Nothing dramatic, nothing fragile. She adjusted her sleeve once and said quietly to herself, "Stay factual. Not emotional, not reactive. Factual." Outside, the sky was pale and indifferent. Dana Whitmore arrived in a dark suit, carrying a briefcase that looked heavier than it was. "You ready?" Dana asked. Ruth picked up her folder. "I've been ready since he opened my drawer," she replied. Dana didn't ask what she meant. She already knew. Inside the courthouse, everything felt smaller than Ruth expected. No thunder, no cinematic tension, just wood, paper, and quiet authority. But she understood something immediately. This was not a place where truth shouted. It was a place where truth was submitted. Caleb arrived 20 minutes later, navy suit, sharp posture, clean face. But something was different now, less confidence, more containment, as if he was holding himself together rather than presenting himself. He didn't look at Ruth at first, not until he had to, and when he did, it was brief, measuring, controlled. The clerk called the case, Carver versus Carver. The sound landed like a label being placed over a life. Not mother and son, not family, just positions, petitioner and respondent. Caleb's attorney stood first. "Your Honor, we are here due to escalating concern regarding the respondent's financial stability." Ruth listened without reacting. The words were familiar now. They had been rehearsed in kitchens, bank offices, and messages. Confusion, instability, concern. All words designed to sound like care. Dana stood next. "Your Honor, the respondent has undergone a full independent neuropsychological evaluation confirming no cognitive impairment." Ruth didn't look at Caleb, but she felt him shift slightly, the first crack in posture. Dana continued, "We also have documented evidence of unauthorized access, attempted cosigner addition, and device-linked login activity originating from the petitioner's residential region." A pause. Not dramatic, just precise. The judge leaned forward. "Is this substantiated by bank logs?" "Yes, Your Honor," Dana replied. The documents were submitted, stacked, stamped, real. Caleb finally looked at Ruth properly. This time, there was no performance left in his face, only calculation trying to reassemble itself under pressure. His attorney tried again. "Your Honor, isolated digital activity can be misinterpreted." The judge interrupted. "Was the petitioner authorized to access the respondent's accounts?" A pause. Too long. Ruth noticed it immediately. Caleb spoke. "I was trying to protect her finances." The sentence sounded rehearsed, even to him. The judge's expression didn't change. That was not the question. Silence. Ruth finally stood when her name was called. She didn't rush. She didn't soften her voice. She simply spoke as if reading something already written. "I manage my own finances. When I detected unauthorized access, I froze all accounts and reported the activity. The petitioner then filed for guardianship using the same financial irregularities as justification for control." She paused once, then added, "I am not incapacitated. I am documented." That word changed the room. Documented. Not emotional, not subjective, verified. Caleb's attorney tried once more.
"Your Honor, families often misinterpret intention." Dana responded immediately. "Intent does not authorize access." Silence again, this time heavier. The judge reviewed the file slowly, page by page, log by log, report by report. Then he looked up. "The request for temporary authority is denied." No pause, no hesitation, just closure. For a moment, nothing moved. Even Caleb didn't react immediately, as if the word hadn't fully reached him yet. Denied. Then the judge continued. "The court finds no evidence of incapacity and notes documented proactive financial protection by the respondent." A beat. "Any further attempts to assert control without authorization may be considered abusive in nature." That sentence landed harder than anything before it. Caleb's attorney leaned in and whispered something to him, but Caleb didn't respond. He was staring at the table now, not Ruth, the table, like something had collapsed under it. When the hearing ended, people began to move, shuffling papers, closing folders, standing, leaving. But Ruth remained seated for a moment longer, not because she was overwhelmed, but because she understood something final. The narrative had changed publicly, not privately, not emotionally, legally. In the hallway, Caleb finally spoke to her. "You turned this into something bigger than it had to be." Ruth looked at him for a long time, then said, "No, I refused to stay smaller than it required." Dana stepped beside her. "We're not done," she said quietly. Ruth nodded. "I know." But she also knew something else. The foundation of control Caleb had tried to build had already started collapsing, not with noise, but with documentation. That night, Ruth sat at her kitchen table again. Same place, different weight in the air. Her notebook lay open. She wrote one line, "Narrative corrected in record." Then she closed it. And for the first time since this began, she didn't feel like she was reacting. She felt like she was deciding.
The court ruling didn't end the story. It ended the illusion Caleb had been building, and what came after was quieter, but far more final. 2 days after the hearing, Ruth Carver sat at her kitchen table with a calm she didn't recognize from the beginning of this ordeal. Not because everything was over, but because everything was now visible. The guardianship petition had been denied. Temporarily, then structurally, Caleb's control attempt had collapsed under evidence. But legal systems, Ruth was learning, do not erase conflict. They reorganize it. Her phone rang just after sunrise. Caleb. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. "What now?" she asked. A long pause on the other end. "I got the notice," he said quietly. "I know," Ruth replied. Another pause. Then Caleb exhaled. "I didn't think they would go this far." Ruth's voice stayed steady. "You started the legal process in my kitchen," she said. "The court just finished it." Silence. Not defensive now, not argumentative, just thin. "I can fix this," Caleb said suddenly. Ruth closed her eyes briefly. "That's what you've been trying to do," she said. "Fix it by controlling it." "I was under pressure," he insisted. "Debt, deadlines. You don't understand." "I understand enough," Ruth interrupted softly. "You thought my accounts were your solution." That sentence hung between them, no escape route inside it. On the other end, Caleb's voice dropped. "They're talking about financial penalties now." "Yes," Ruth said. "And maybe charges." "Yes." A long silence. Then Caleb said something she didn't expect. "I didn't think you would fight me." Ruth looked around her kitchen. The same table, same light, same quiet. "I didn't think I would either," she admitted. That evening, Dana Whitmore arrived with final documents. She placed them on the table without ceremony. "It's not over," Dana said. Ruth nodded. "I know." Dana flipped open the file. Restitution has been processed. Your accounts are fully restored under protected structure. The fiduciary arrangement is active. Ruth listened carefully. And Caleb? Dana hesitated slightly. Deferred prosecution recommendation, financial ethics program, monitoring period. Ruth didn't react immediately. Then she said, "So it stops here, legally." Dana corrected gently. "It stops escalating, not necessarily repairing." Ruth accepted that without argument, because something inside her already understood. This was never just about stopping harm. It was about redefining boundaries that had never been enforced before. The next morning, Caleb appeared at her porch, not aggressively, not confidently, just present. He stood at the porch before knocking. Ruth opened the door halfway. No invitation, no retreat, just controlled space. "What do you want?" she asked. Caleb looked different, less polished, more human. "I don't know how to fix what I did," he said. Ruth studied him for a long moment, then replied, "Then stop trying to fix it and start understanding it." Caleb swallowed. "You really see me as that?" "As someone who crossed a line," Ruth said evenly. "Yes." Silence again. Then he nodded once, not agreeing, not arguing, acknowledging. "I thought I was helping," he said again. Ruth didn't soften. Help doesn't require access without consent. That line landed. Caleb looked down briefly. For the first time in the entire conflict, there was no defense forming immediately, just stillness. "I don't know what I'm supposed to be now," he said quietly. Ruth answered after a pause. "Accountable," she said. "That's where it starts." He stepped back slightly, not leaving, not staying, between. "I'll do the program," he said finally, "whatever they require." Ruth nodded once. "That's your responsibility." A pause. Then Caleb added, "Do you ever think we can be normal again?" Ruth looked at him, not as a legal subject, not as a petitioner, as a son, and answered honestly, "Normal is not something we return to, it's something we rebuild differently." He didn't respond, but he didn't argue either, and that, for the first time, felt like progress. After he left, Ruth closed the door slowly, not with force, not with relief, with completion of a boundary. Inside, the house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. Before had been uncertainty, now it was order. She sat at her kitchen table and opened her notebook, the same notebook that had carried timelines, evidence, and patterns. Now she wrote something different. Control is not love. Access is not trust. Documentation is not aggression. It is protection. She closed it gently. Weeks later, the financial restitution arrived in full. Dana called to confirm. "It's done." Ruth replied simply, "Not done, stabilized." Dana almost smiled through the phone. That's one way to put it. Caleb completed the first phase of his program. No celebration, no reconciliation moment, just structured compliance. The court record remained unchanged, final. One Sunday afternoon, Aunt Linda visited again. This time she didn't bring explanations, just silence and coffee. After a long pause, she asked, "Do you regret it?" Ruth thought about that carefully. "No," she said, then added, "I regret that it had to be proven." Linda nodded slowly. "He loved you," she said softly. Ruth didn't disagree. "I know," Ruth replied, "but love without boundaries becomes assumption." That evening, Ruth sat alone again, tea steaming, window open slightly, air moving through the house like it finally belonged there again. She looked around. Nothing was missing now. Not documents, not control, not clarity. She had not lost her son, but she had stopped losing herself, and that, she understood now, was the real line everything had been about. She picked up her notebook one last time, wrote a final sentence. Autonomy is not taken in one moment, it is protected in many. Then she closed it, and for the first time since Caleb had placed those papers on her kitchen table, she did not prepare for the next attack, she prepared for peace.